Can't get enough BYU football? Listen to Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper takes your calls Monday nights from 6 to 7 on KSL News Radio. Podcast at kslnewsradio.com.
Shameless plug. Tomorrow afternoon, JJ and Alex on the KSL Sports Zone, and then right when 6 o'clock pops up, that's when you can come on there and start complaining to Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte about or give your thoughts. I mean, honestly, you're going to have a lot of excited BYU fans, I think, about that BYU defense, obviously, Mitch. But there will be the questions. People coming out of the woodwork going, what's going on with this quarterback situation? I thought he didn't throw any picks in camp. But, yeah, tons of questions still. But this is how the season goes. You got to roll it out. You have to play the games, Mitch, to try to see what happens. Speaking of another game, I'm watching that Utah and Baylor game, and I'm going – somebody tweeted it out. I don't even know who it was, just kind of a rando on Twitter. But I was like, yeah. The statement was Utah and Baylor not even playing the same sport currently. And I thought that's exactly right. That's how big of a disconnect Baylor was with that Utah team. Speaking of good defenses, that Utah defense scares the heck out of people, and it happened again yesterday. But, man, as soon as Cam Rising went out of that game, the Gatorade table collision and whatever happened with his hand, a cut or a sprain, I don't know what it ended up being, but they said it's not that big of a deal, but it is on his throwing hand, Mitch. And so you already had people coming out of the woodwork going, hey, man, keep that guy out versus Utah State. You can roll up there in Logan. You don't need him. But you saw how bad that Utah offense was. Part of it is you're not planning on putting Isaac Wilson in the very early stages of this game. But Utah looks really good, but there's a part that just feels a little bit nerve-wracking because of the injury history with Cam Rising.
No question, and you just don't want it to, become a couple days he's out, and then it turns into a couple weeks, and it's just an ongoing deal. And because this team's got playoff aspirations. When we're putting them at number one in our power rankings in the last segment, that's a team that's going to be viewed for the playoff chase. And you saw that in the first half with the defense. I mean, through the whole game. I thought I was really impressed with Nate Ritchie. He's become a mainstay. He's always been a heralded guy from that COVID year in 2020, coming out of Lone Peak. He had 9 tackles, a tackle for loss in this game. They just dominated Baylor. And any thought that I kind of had a thought that maybe Baylor would be a little competitive because I was intrigued by DeQuan Finn, the Toledo transfer at quarterback. He was a MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Just suffocated him. He was doing nothing. 9 of 21, 115 yards. Utah was all over him. And, I will say this, it was a impressive first impression for Utah. I know it wasn't a conference game. It was non-conference because it was an old, home and home series scheduled, but they kind of sent a message that their style of play, they are out to just attack these Big 12 teams. Now, there's a much better teams in this league than Baylor, but still, they sent a message like if you're near the cellar of this league, they will crush you, especially at home. Utah just continues, what is it now, 33 of their last 36 they've won at home, something to that effect. So it was a really good first impression in this league going up against a Big 12 foe in a weird non-conference matchup.
Yeah, here's what Kyle Whittingham had to say about it. Obviously, you're good to get the win, and even if there's some uncomfortable feelings about what that looks like going forward with Cam Rising's injury, here's what Whit said after the game.
It's good to get the win. As the college football world found out today, it's hard to get wins, Division I wins sometimes, and we didn't play perfectly. We had a lot that we left on the table. Started out, I thought we were going to win by 40. We got up 17-zip fairly early, and then we just lost our momentum. Credit Baylor, they hung in there, made some plays, kept fighting. Certainly when Cam left the game, that was a downer for us, but the world can't stop turning when Cam exits a game, and we got to keep playing, which we did, but we got to be productive, which we were not real productive after that. So we'll continue to figure that out.
Isaac Wilson, we'll talk about that in the next segment here too, but and we'll hear more from Kyle Whittingham. But yeah, he's been thrust in the last 2 weeks, Mitch, in some weird situations, kind of where you weren't necessarily like, oh, that's exactly where you want him. So I'm not going to be the guy that gets on here and dogs Isaac Wilson. I saw him play in high school, and he was the best high school player I've ever seen in person. I mean, that's having watched a lot of good players, including his brother at that very same school.
He was better than Zach at
Yes.
graduating high school. And look, I watched Zach a ton at Corner Canyon. Isaac was better than Zach at this point of their careers. As far as freshmen, signal callers, yes, I agree. Isaac was special. And I will say, we kind of tongue-in-cheek, about Utah State next week. I do believe you could win a game with Isaac Wilson in Logan next week, if need be, because Utah State, they got thumped 48-zip to USC. And I know it's USC, but still, you can win that game with Isaac Wilson if you need to, and that defense is not going to give up anything to Utah State. So I think that if you need to give Cam a week, I think it's okay to do because Utah State's the perfect spot to make that happen, to give him extra time to be ready for conference play coming up against that big game against Oklahoma State in 2 weeks.
Let's take another break here. Let's jump in because we'll come back with more of our Utah breakdown against Baylor. We'll hear a little bit more of a chunk from Kyle Whittingham and his thoughts after the game about how this one went down. And there's time to go here. It's a Sunday morning. It's our breakdown of the Big 12 every week right here. It's called First and 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. You can also hear us on KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM. So we'll be right back. More to go. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio.